I moved into my new apartment on the third floor after 2 months of searching for something cheap. The place was small, but honestly, it was perfect. Quiet building, decent neighborhood, and the rent was surprisingly low. Maybe a little too low. The first strange thing happened during my first week there. One afternoon, I opened my door and found a small package sitting on the floor outside. It had a shipping label on it, but the name wasn't mine. It said, Salim. I assumed it belonged to the previous tenant, so I left it near the entrance of the building for someone to pick up. But the next day, another package arrived, same name, Salim. Then another one the day after that. By the third package, I got annoyed. I taped a note to my door that said, Salim doesn't live here. Please stop sending packages. After that, the packages stopped coming. For a few days, everything went back to normal. But then, I started noticing little things. Every time I came home from work, something felt slightly different. The pillows on the couch looked like they had been moved. A kitchen cabinet that I was sure I had closed was suddenly open. And sometimes there was this strange smell in the kitchen. Cheap cigarettes, the kind that lingers in the air. The problem was, I don't smoke. I tried to convince myself it was just paranoia. You know how it is when you move somewhere new. Every sound feels strange, every shadow feels wrong. So I ignored it. Until one night. It was late, the apartment was completely dark, and I was lying in bed trying to fall asleep. Then I heard it. A small sound from the living room. Just a tiny click. Then another sound, like the slow opening of a zipper. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked. I sat up slowly and stared at my bedroom door. The living room was silent again. For a moment, I thought maybe I imagined it, but something felt wrong, very wrong. So I slowly got out of bed and walked toward the door. My hand was shaking as I gently pulled it open just enough to look through the crack. The living room was mostly dark, but a little bit of street light was coming through the window. And in that faint light, I saw him, a man sitting on my couch. His back was facing me, and he was calmly opening one of the packages that had been delivered earlier. My heart felt like it stopped. I didn't scream, I didn't move. I slowly stepped back and grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it while dialing the police. While I was waiting for someone to answer, the man stood up, slowly. He walked across the living room and into the hallway. Then he opened the closet door, stepped inside, and quietly closed it behind him. A few minutes later, the police arrived. They searched the entire apartment, the living room, the kitchen, the bathroom. Finally, they opened the closet door. It was empty, completely empty. One of the officers laughed and said, "Maybe you were dreaming, kid. This place is secure." But after they left, I couldn't sleep. Something about that closet didn't feel right. So I grabbed a flashlight and looked inside again. It was an old built-in wall closet. While I was examining it, I noticed something strange. The screws on the back panel looked new. Too new. Shiny. I grabbed the panel and pulled. It took a little force, but eventually it came loose. Behind it, there was a narrow space inside the wall, barely half a meter wide, just enough room for someone to lie down. Inside that hidden gap, I found a thin mattress, empty food containers, and a phone, plugged into a charger connected to my apartment's electricity. But the worst thing I found was a small notebook. Inside it was a detailed schedule of my life, when I leave for work, when I shower, when I go to sleep, even what I ate for dinner. That man wasn't the previous tenant. Salim was the landlord. He lived in the apartment next door, and he had designed the two apartments with a hidden gap between them, a space where he could secretly live and watch his tenants without them ever knowing. Those packages, they were small cameras and recording devices he ordered online, devices he installed in my apartment while I was at work. I left that night, and I never went back. But even now, every time I move into a new place, The first thing I do is knock on the closet walls, just to make sure they're solid and that no one is breathing behind them.
3 years ago, I was living in a small house outside a quiet town in Montana. The main reason I moved there was because land was incredibly cheap compared to the cities. I owned a large piece of property surrounded by dense forest on 3 sides, and the only road leading to my house was a long dirt driveway. Normally, nobody ever came out that way. One cold autumn night, the wind was hitting the trees pretty hard. I was sitting in my living room, watching TV, when the power suddenly went out. That wasn't unusual for the area. I grabbed a flashlight and sat there waiting for the electricity to come back on. About 10 minutes later, I heard something strange, the sound of a car engine outside. I froze. It wasn't normal for any vehicle to come down my road. My closest neighbor lived about 4 miles away. I turned off the flashlight and slowly walked over to the window. Through the darkness, I could see a pair of headlights sitting at the beginning of my dirt driveway. But the strange part was, the car wasn't moving. The headlights were just sitting there. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 5. Suddenly, the lights shut off. The car disappeared completely into the darkness. I felt uneasy, but I tried convincing myself the driver had simply taken a wrong turn and would leave. About 10 minutes later, I heard footsteps on the gravel outside my house. A chill ran down my spine. Someone was slowly walking around the house. I could hear the gravel crunching beneath their feet. The footsteps stopped near the kitchen window. Then I heard something that made my heart drop. The sound of the window handle moving. Someone was trying to open it. I slowly backed away from the window and walked to the closet where I keep my handgun. Just then, there was a knock on the front door. Not a normal knock. 3 very slow knocks. Then silence. I stood beside the wall near the door, holding the gun. Several seconds passed. Then I heard a man's voice outside say quietly, "I know you're in there." I didn't respond. After a moment, I heard footsteps walking away from the door. Carefully, I moved to the window and looked outside. I saw the man walking toward the darkness at the edge of the forest, but before he disappeared, he stopped, then slowly turned his head toward the house. Even from that distance, I had the feeling he was looking directly at the window I was standing behind. Then he vanished between the trees. The police arrived about 40 minutes later. While searching the area near the dirt road, they found something strange hidden in the grass. It was a metal box filled with tools, gloves, duct tape, a knife, and a flashlight. One of the officers told me something I'll never forget. He said those tools didn't look random. They looked like a kit that had been prepared in advance, like someone had hidden them there, waiting for the right moment. They never found the man or the car. And since that night, I keep the outside lights on all the time. Because the forest behind my house gets extremely dark, and sometimes I still get the feeling that someone is standing out there, waiting.
I'm a software developer, and for the last 2 years, my apartment has been my entire world. I work from home, I order my groceries online, I rarely ever leave. Because I'm a tech geek, I turned my place into a smart home. Everything, the lights, the locks, the curtains, is controlled through an app on my phone. It felt like living in the future. It felt safe. Until about a month ago. It started with a notification at 3 a.m. Balcony door opened. I jumped out of bed, heart pounding, and grabbed a baseball bat. I ran to the living room, but the balcony door was shut tight, locked. I checked the logs on my phone. The sensor insisted it had been open for exactly 3 seconds. I figured it was just a glitch, a bug in the software. I deleted the alert and went back to sleep. But then, things got weirder. One rainy Tuesday, I was working late with my headphones on. Suddenly, my music ducked, the way it does when a voice assistant is listening. I looked at the smart speaker in the corner of the room. The ring was glowing blue. I didn't say anything. I just listened. Through the speaker, I heard a sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. It wasn't a digital voice. It was the sound of heavy, ragged breathing. Someone was on the other end, listening to me. "Is someone there?" I whispered. The speaker chirped its standard response. "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that." But I knew what I heard. Someone had hacked into my system, or worse. I couldn't sleep after that. I bought a small, cheap security camera, one that wasn't connected to my smart home network. I hid it inside a bookshelf facing the kitchen and let it record to an SD card. The next morning, I pulled the card and plugged it into my laptop. My hands were shaking. I fast-forwarded to 3:15 a.m. On the screen, I watched the pantry door in my kitchen creak open. A man, thin, skeletal, with long, matted hair, slid out of the tiny cupboard. He didn't head for the fridge. He didn't look for money. He walked straight to the sofa where I had been sitting hours before. He stood there, perfectly still, for 45 minutes, staring at the empty space as if he were watching me sleep. Then, he pulled a small remote from his pocket, pressed a button, and my living room lights flashed red before turning off. He wasn't just hiding in my house, he was playing with it. Last night, I'd had enough. I called the police from my car after pretending to leave for a walk. When they arrived, they searched every inch of the apartment. They found a false panel in the back of my kitchen pantry that led to a narrow maintenance crawl space. Inside, they found a sleeping bag, my missing tablet, and dozens of empty food wrappers. But the man was gone. He must have escaped through the roof hatch when he heard the sirens. The police left, telling me to change my passwords and stay with a friend. But I was exhausted. I just wanted to sit on my own couch for 1 minute of peace. As I sat there in the silence, my phone vibrated in my pocket. A new notification from my bedroom camera, the one I forgot to turn off. Unknown device attempting to pair with bedroom camera. Allow? I looked up at the camera on the wall. The small lens slowly began to rotate, clicking as it focused, directly on my face.